Hello, historians. Welcome to the last AP World Chat for 2019. It's nice to see you here. This is the hardcore, the people who are still on Fiveable even after the test is done. If you just let me know what you think you got over in the chat. Some people are starting to do that. Just want to make sure you can hear me, see what's going on. And I did put a poll question in there. I'm sort of curious if people are taking another test or not. That might influence the kinds of things I talk about. So, and then on the green button, which should work, you can click on that and then you can download all the questions. If you haven't done that yet, I came in maybe a minute late. The College Board site is where I downloaded that from, is not working. So I found a copy and uploaded it to my blog. In any case, so I'm Eric Beckman and I'm here in Minnesota where it's finally spring. And I've taken a look over the weekend at the questions. And some of the things that people are saying in the essay, there isn't necessarily, it's not quite a curve, but they do norm it. So, if a question's a lot harder, it turns out like students are having trouble, then they lower the standard for what you need to get to achieve a certain score. Really though, it's just, did you do your best? And there it is. So if you take a second there in the poll and see if you are all done, or some of you will be taking APUSH next year. And as you know, the format for the essays is exactly the same. So going through this, each question, Joan, will be normed individually, meaning they're going to try to adjust the scoring so that so that the distribution of scores, like you take stats, like that bell-shaped curve, so that that's similar on the different questions. And what that will look like it's not quite a curve because it's still going to be the same rubric. Like the DBQ will still be worth 7 points. But when we look at these, I'll say a few things. I'll say a few things like, well, I'm not sure how much you would have to have for a thesis. Like last year, I graded the DBQ on railroads, which some of you might have seen Amanda go through. And getting context for that question was pretty easy. It was easier than some other years. And that might be because, it was hard for kids to pick up some of the other points. And the same thing with the multiple choice. The multiple choice won't be curved or normed per se, but your multiple choice score and all your essay scores will go into a big formula, and that formula would be produce a raw score, and then what the cutoff point for that raw score, that moves around a little bit. So if you put your scores into like a calculator at like albert.io or something, if you've played around with that, that's not exact because it moves around a little bit every year. So what I would like to, a lot of you taking APUSH. That's nice. That's you'll have all kinds of context set from this class. And if you aren't taking a history class next year and love this, you could do a little bit of reading and some Fiveable and pass Euro, like if you had success in this class. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen here so we can take a look at the questions. Okay, yeah. If you're thinking of taking APUSH, I just see Ashley's comment there. If you're thinking of taking APUSH at any point, you can just vote yes there just to see, because let's see. Some of these questions that are coming though right now, Sophia. No, world history is rarely a required class, although it might meet what is sometimes called a distribution requirement, meaning that you have to take one, like it's in a category of classes, like global cultures, and there's probably multiple ways for non-majors to satisfy that requirement. So world history might or might not meet it. And depending on when you go to school, or where you go to school, sorry, the school may just give you generic credits for your AP World score, or they may give you credits in a specific class. That's important because then the specific class would meet your requirement. So the essays aren't even going to be graded for like 3 weeks. So that's kind of why they don't things don't come up. And then the essays and the multiple choice scores have to be all brought back together and packaged to be put out. So let's go ahead though and take a look, and you can ask questions. I'll keep my eye on the chat. So I'm going to do a tab in Chrome. And if you haven't, whoa, yeah, this is what I was playing around with. That link does not work right now. So use the green button link if you would. Delete that. All right. And Amanda was going to be here, so she's on the slide, but then she had something come up. So just be me, like 40 minutes here. Take a look at the questions. As I said, I have been a reader for the LEQ 2 years ago in world history, and for the DBQ last year. And this year I'm reading SAQ, so I don't have as much exactly to say about that, but I can tell you some things. Let's see that. There we are. All right, so let's take a look at the short answer questions. The first thoughts that I had looking at this was that the questions there looked a lot like, there's some similarities. So question 1 was really similar to SAQ from last year, and some of you might have seen that. I went over it in one of my sessions, and I think Amanda went over it in one of her sessions. Some of you may have written it for your final. So that was there. It looks like the bar is being set lower on the SAQ this year. What that means is it's like a high jump metaphor to try to get kids to score a little higher, because in questions 1 and 2, the first 2 questions say identify instead of explain, and identify is easier than explain. And then I was kind of curious when we get to it, we can talk in a minute, but what if you made any sense out of that graph? I didn't think that was immediately doable. And this is the last time, as you might have heard, that period 1 will be on the test. And so I guess it's not really a surprise then, because they're not going to be able to use that question again, that was there. So if you did do the breaking down the SAQ that I did, or the one with Amanda, I think that would have helped, because we looked at question number 3. All right, take a look at the first question. Someone had some stuff on here for about the Nomads, and this was kind of my lightly annotated copy of this. In yellow are the things I thought were, important. I kind of circled them in question marks in red there, because I feel like in AP World History, like the idea that nomads transmit culture is pretty well established. So it was interesting. I circled 2001 because this question was actually made. This question was actually made after, or 1 year before the first AP World test. Like this text was made before AP World even existed. First year was 2000. First test was 2002. So in some ways, it's kind of a dated thing. All the questions here are argumentation, which means you need to give the different things here. Hey, you cannot be talking about multiple choice questions in the chat. I'll have, because that's what can get all of us in trouble, and it's not worth it. So just got a little group of us here. Let's just take a look at the short answer questions, and I'll answer the GDP question in a minute. All right. So the first step is to delete questions like that, and then the second thing is to ban people. So don't talk about multiple choice questions, please. All right. And the reason for that is they reuse them. That's why they care about it. All right. So on this question then, the first 2 questions are identify questions. So really just one specific piece of evidence, right? Are people getting into the the document itself if you click on the green button? Does that work? Okay. And if you just want to look at the slides, that's fine, but that's where that goes. Okay, so with this, you just need to come up with an example. And like A, that's one I said is real similar to last year's question. So how many people went Mongols there? Some Mongols. All right. Yeah, the College Board link wasn't working, Andrew, but if it's working now, or if that version of the address works, that's great. Oh, Ilkhanate, nice. That's from way downtown. That is serious. Vikings and Slavs. Okay. Who are the nomads then? I think Vikings and Slavs would actually probably work for part C. That's challenging the assertion because those aren't nomadic empires. But I would think you'd have some Mongols there moving around. And then different kinds of culture, could be religion, gunpowder, could be things that happened. Yep. I think Bantu and Swahili are going to be examples of things, again, for C that challenge that. For C, it's asking what challenges it. Then you would have that. So Mongols adopting Islam for A, yes, that's a cultural exchange. So the nomads, and especially the Ilkhanate, conquer the Middle East, and then they adopt Islam, or Yuan dynasty, where the Mongol Khans take on some Chinese culture. So I don't think I would consider Vikings nomads, but I don't know. It's an interesting question. I wonder, I might be wrong. And it'll be interesting to see if they take that example, because they tended to have bases and then go out and raid and trade and come back, but maybe. Buddhism, sweet. Yep. Change the role that's central. So here, 1450 to 1750, I think that's kind of looking for, my guess would be that that's like oceanic trade, maritime empires, maritime exchange. Those kinds of things that change then, or it could be the like Europeans in the Indian Ocean, like getting things directly, so they're not having to come across the steppe. Yeah, trading post empires for B. That sounds right on. And then you were able to use that on the DBQ too. I hope, Shrieker, right? That would fit there. Mongol invasion, Abbasids 1258. Nice. Yeah, like if you know stuff like that, you're in good shape. You're gonna do just fine. So those would be the things there. You'd have to have something specific, but things like gunpowder, Buddhism, trading post empires, those would count as specifics. You would need actual names. Yeah, technological development. What might that be? Yes, it could be. One development could be a technological development. I'm kind of blanking on, yeah, the ships for the long distance trade. So land trade was less important. I think for B and C, yeah, things about ships. So it's not all pastoral nomads be like, well, yeah, sometimes these things moved around by ships. All right. Yeah, caravels, cool. Missionaries. Yeah, that stuff all makes lots of sense. I think this question was looks like a lot of people had some good things. I don't know about sea exploration for C because it depends on what you're talking about. Like something like, say, Zheng He, maybe in the Indian Ocean. Yeah, Alexander Great and Hellenistics for C because that's empire to empire, right? It's not. So he's saying, the author here is saying that the author's saying that nomads are the most important thing for exchange between the east and west of Eurasia, maybe east and west of Afro-Eurasia. So anything that's not a nomad that you can show. So before 1450 is a big target too. So you would have that. Okay. Mongols transporting religion and culture, Eastern, that's going to work for A. It changed the role. So something that changed the role that the nomads played is probably going to be some sort of development that involves water, because then it's not land. Right. Okay. It depends on how you would say the Arabic numerals diffused. Like if you could show there weren't nomads involved, and the best way to do that would probably be sea trade. Okay. All right, let's take a look at the next one here. Did this graph make sense to you? That's kind of a question I have. Yeah, I feel like you could use the chariot for A, Alex. This one here, yeah, no, kind of. So GDP is gross domestic product. I know it tells you that, right? Or no? Not really. So gross domestic products, like gross in this case doesn't mean icky, it means total. Oh, good. Some of this doesn't make sense. Oh, yeah, right. AP Human Geo. Yeah, that helps. My kids have that class before World also. So I know some of you will have it afterwards. Yeah, Muslim diasporic communities for 1C for sure. So per capita means per person. Cap means head, like a cap on your head, or a capital like on top of a column, or the capital. So per person here. So you can see the U.S., you know, gross domestic product, the total amount of the U.S. economy is way bigger than Norway. You know, because the United States is like 30, 40 times the size of Norway. But per person, you can see that the U.S. is just a little bit bigger than Norway. But Norwegians live longer, so that's good. So we have that. I thought these questions were maybe a little harder, but, you know, I don't know. Well, I'm sure, again, it probably matters if you had AP, if you've had Geo or not. Okay. So the first question is an argumentation question where you're just looking at what does the data say? And the big difference there is that on the, you know, the richer countries tend to be countries that had colonies, and the poorer countries tend to be countries that were colonies, if you just look from left to right. So that first question is only looking for you to compare right to left on the graph, right? Global economic differences in the late 20th century, the charts in the late 20th century. So what do the countries on the right have in common? Well, they industrialized. They tend to be connected. They're from the global north. You could talk about that. I think not industrializing would work for sure. Then you just need, because it just says identify. So I think industrialization would be enough. So for that one, for B, I thought B was kind of a funny question, in that they only have a few named countries there. So I'm not sure. Those countries that have higher income but the lower life expectancy in 2009 had significant people living with HIV and AIDS, especially 10 years ago. I know Botswana has really improved their situation, but that's super detailed. I mean, that is more detailed than I think you might need. So one similarity, they might account for the low life expectancy of some of the world's countries. So other than GDP, well, then you might talk about things like disease. Yeah. The different kinds of diseases. Like one of the things that's in the course framework is, yeah, like less healthcare from less wealth, or if there's, you know, malaria, you know, like environmental diseases. People in richer countries tend to get lifestyle diseases, you know, like diabetes and heart trouble, whereas people in poorer countries are more likely to get, you know, contagious diseases or things that you don't get vaccinated for. So one similarity would maybe need to be, you'd have to probably make some sort of a connection. In terms of advanced medicine, it's not even so much that the medicine, I think that might work. But I think that you could also talk about distribution of it. Like if you were in a hospital in Botswana, there's going to be up-to-date technology. The question is the country able to get things like vaccines out to everybody? That would be kind of the deal. I think imperialism might be the way to go with these. All right. So then new political, economic, and social problems. Well, I mean, I think that's again something where you could, some of the things that people might know from Human Geo might work. You know, some of your countries, you know, those population pyramids. Right, yeah. Triton, I see. Yeah, like they are located in Africa, all the listed ones that are lower down. So then that's where you could bring in imperialism, or also maybe tropical diseases. So yeah, population, pollution, problems with aging populations, you know, as people live longer, and those population pyramids, more difficult to provide social services if you have a lot of people out of the workforce. Yeah, Japan, right? Someone said, that sounds like what's that thing called? Demographic transition model. Yep, the same thing. It's like Social Security, streetcar. that makes some sense. Like in that you have the people retire and there's fewer people paying in. In the United States, we have a little more immigration, a little higher birth rate than similar countries like that. And a country like Norway has dealt with that through immigration because immigrants tend to be younger like that. Yeah, I think Alzheimer's, well, no, this not for C though, Dia, because it's asking about different kinds of problems, political, economic, or social. So yeah, your baby boom, baby bust situation. Overall, this strikes me as a more difficult set of questions, just because the source is not quite as transparent. And it's going to be hard to figure out what the evidence is going to look like for some of these. So we'll see. Yeah, I think culture, Jade's saying abortion, conflicts, political issues very much in the news right now. I would think that any of those sort of culture war topics, you can call them, would be a thing that once most people have enough to survive, then we argue about other things. So the individual questions aren't so much curved. The way to think about this is, where do they set the standard? So if we're looking, say, let's go to this next question. I'm going to kind of answer this looking at this question here. So it says, identify one way. How many people answered this one, by the way? A lot of people answer this. Let's see in the... Some people did. Maybe I can create a poll, another poll. Oh, a lot of you taking A-push. That's nice. Okay. I'm going to put another poll up on which SAQ, and then one will be number 3, just so I can see, and number 4. Okay. And a few people wanted to second Shrikar's question, but now it's gone in the chat. So Shrikar, if you wouldn't mind just popping that back in there or putting it into ask a question over here. Yeah, so you just go ahead and vote there. Yeah, the answers to that first question on multiple choice are correct from Alina and Shrikar. Right. Zhang nice to see you here. Yeah, we can talk about anything with the DBQ. Oh yeah, I'll change the button to these slides. Okay. How about that? Oh, except maybe I can't. I'll just put it in the call to action. I do it like that. Okay. I'm going to change the button to the slides, and I'll come back and talk about 3. Okay. Yeah. Maybe I'll have to do that at the end. I'm going to put this link in, the call to action, the green, that's what the green button is called, and it'll probably take you to a specific slide, but that's fine. Okay. I don't know if that works. All right, so let's take a look here at this question. Oh, not that one, this one right here. All right, so identify one way in which subsistence patterns, right, the Neolithic Revolution continued among some Eurasian societies in the period circa 10,000 BCE to 3,000 BCE. Subsistence patterns prior to the... So the question then is, before that, like, what does that mean? Like, so when you talk about whether or not these things are going to get curved, the question really is, how specific does the evidence need to be that they're going to, what does that mean in terms of like how specific the evidence needs to be to get that point? So here you could say, I think that some people still moved around, like pastoral nomads moved around, just like foragers moved around. I think that's the main continuity they're looking for. But then the question is, yeah, pastoralism, right? That's a continuity. Now, pastoralism isn't the same thing as hunting and gathering, but it is more nomadic, and so it's more similar than agriculture. Now the question is then, will you have to have a specific, pastoral nomadic group in there, like Indo-Europeans migrating or Hittites or something like that? Will you need that? That's what I'm not sure. That's what I'm not sure about. Okay. Right. No multiple choice talk. So I think that's the main thing that continued. One way that things changed, people's subsistence patterns. Now, what's going to be tough about that question is, yeah, that's too early for Bantu migration, unfortunately. This is like way back. Yeah, so agriculture would be right. And then subsistence is going to mean like, what are people eating? So how do people eat differently in agriculture than they do in hunting and gathering? And so like, how is, what the things that they eat different? And so I think there you're going to have to name a food stuff. Like you're going to have to name wheat or barley or rice or potatoes, yams, something like that. Okay. Ooh, Polynesian. No, it's way too early for Polynesian migration. Yeah, sorry. And remember, or at least if you saw my presentation, that you don't have to get all 9 points. Like if you get 6 points in these 3 SAQ, you are in great shape. Like you can get a 4, maybe even a 5 with 6, and for sure with 7. Like you absolutely do not need to get all the things right. Those migrations take place over a really long time period, so they're going to be in multiple time periods. But I feel like it's the end of period 1 when that stuff starts happening. So if you get one of these wrong, it doesn't mean that much, So when you take A-push, those of you who are doing that, if you just bear down on 6 of them, and that's better off than doing just okay in a lot. More sedentary, yeah. I don't know if sedentary is going to count. I don't know, because I'm not sure if that's subsistence. So subsistence, that's going to be like for C, social structures, political or social structures. So that's your patriarchy, that's your class systems, those things. Yep, stratification, nice. Yeah, I'm not. Your teacher may be right, Arnav. In terms of that, sedentary is a word that they like. That's something where, yeah, we will see with that. I think for sure down here, you're going to need to probably name a civilization, because we're getting all the way up to here. So like if you talked about it could be, patriarchy and name the civilization, right? But then you name a civilization, Mesopotamia, East Asia, any dynasty, but then you could even just say China, Egypt, those kind of things. So this year I'm scoring short answer questions, Nicholas, from home. The other questions are scored at the reading, but Mohenjo-Daro, maybe. Because there you could talk about, they get this bigger city. We don't know much about their, we don't know yet. Terry's right about subsistence. We don't know tons about how their society worked, the Mohenjo-Daro stuff. We do know it was big, though. And urban planning, I think that would work for that. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. Looks like more people did the next one, huh? Yeah, a lot of you did this. Okay. Yeah, it's September, when we covered the other stuff. Okay, for this one here, the key thing here is new elites. Okay, so our new elites for 1750 to 1900 here. So I think this is an industrialization question to my mind. Ibn Battuta is the end of period 3, yeah. Yep, joint stock companies would be an economic change, although that's before. Those joint stock companies are in period 4, but capitalism, industrialism, industrial capitalism, sugar maybe, plantation agriculture, cotton agriculture. Mercantilism's a little earlier in general. but yeah, maybe still hanging on here. Yeah, industrialization. I think, though, to me, the most obvious thing for this one is that you have industrialization that leads to new economic elites like business owners, like your bourgeoisie. We have that. Now, the joint stock companies are period 4. So that's 1600 for the East India companies, as an example. Like 1600 in England and 1602 in the Netherlands, I think. Okay. Traditional elites, then that's going to be landowning nobles, and that would be a place, where you can look outside of, you can look all around the world. The Sepoy Rebellion is this period. That's 1857, but it's not really an economic thing. The formation of new elites, yeah. And then here, I think it's kind of looking for liberalism and the revolutions. Yeah, I suppose they're rebelling against the joint stock company, with that. Yeah, stock markets, the New York Stock Exchange. Yeah, stock markets would, again, that stuff starts earlier, but that's kind of where this is going for. Right. And you have not just traditional elites, right? The people's, I think religious elites would be a good way to go. And you want to bring in a society, whether that's a Christian or a Muslim or Hindu, Confucian society, right? That could work, Rachel. I think you'd probably have to have something, right? For 4B, right? So some people who had land then diversified and got into other things, right? Yeah. All right, let's take a look let's keep her moving here and look at the next set of questions. All right, so take a look at the DBQ. Hopefully, it's pretty happy. My first ever fiveable stream was on the Indian Ocean. So thank you to my student, Lorraine, who suggested that as a topic. Now, seriously, if it hadn't been the DBQ, it's a really big topic. So then it would have been a different place in the exam. Let's go ahead. How did people feel about the DBQ? Do you feel like you could talk about the documents? Yeah. Contextualization was tough. Good. And again, a 5 would be an awesome score. So again, you have to kind of think of this not like a regular class where a 5 out of 7 would be a C and you might feel bad. Here, 5 points on this it's going to be good. That's really going to work out for you. So let's take a look here at this. So here's all the different rubric points. So this is a CCOT question. So hopefully, you look at that. And so when I was reading these documents, I was just marking them as continuity or change. Like this shows continuity, this shows change. That's one way to go ahead and organize it. It would have been one way. So we have that. What you would need for a thesis and also for like the things that you would organize your body paragraphs with would be some way to qualify this and then a reason. So this is a classic, what I call like LYBY, like an adverb and then the word by. So the Portuguese greatly transformed maritime trade in the Indian Ocean with, by creating trading post empires. No, you have to interpret 6 documents correctly to get that point. So there, yeah, the box picture. I'll tell you what I made of the box picture when we get in a second. But so that's what it would be. So a thesis here is going to need to have a qualifier, the extent to which. So you might say slightly, somewhat, greatly. And then you would talk about, by what, how did that happen? So you're kind of showing up a cause, right? So how did they, and transform's a really strong word. And so I think obviously the Portuguese affected maritime trade. I mean, transformed, I think that's too strong. And the evidence would point back the other way. All right, let's take a look here. So for context, I think the thing when you're doing context is you can take part of the prompt and then expand on it as background. So here you could talk more about things with Portugal, like the Reconquista, which if you cover that, I know some classes cover that a lot, some not so much, but that's when the Spanish and Portuguese reconquered from their point of view, the Iberian Peninsula from Muslims. You could talk about other Portuguese exploration, like a little Vasco da Gama, trading posts in Africa in that way. So you could do more with Portugal, or the Portuguese are coming into this Indian Ocean trade. So any kind of talking about the Indian Ocean, how it existed before this period. So monsoon winds, Swahili city-states, diasporic communities, all those things. And then you could also just in general talk about maritime commerce and empires were getting a lot bigger. Yeah, so something like Columbian Exchange, something like Columbian Exchange shows, that there was this kind of, commerce going back and forth, and the population gains in Europe are going to lead to more markets for goods coming in from the Indian Ocean. The key would be to bring it into that. Yeah, it's kind of probably not on the Bantu migration. Okay. Yeah, if you were to talk about the rise of the Ottoman Empire, since that comes up in some of these documents, that could also be what sometimes people call small c, what people call small c context, where you're just contextualizing one document. Yeah, the Ottomans outlast the Portuguese. So the Ottoman Empire is still rising. That's other things going on there. Okay. So those would be things maybe for context. The key is, can you connect it into one of these things? We have Portugal and the Indian Ocean. So you'd want to take something that gets connected to that. Okay, here's some evidence that I found in the documents as I was looking through them. And so there's most of these things were multiple documents. So continuities. So if you were to say the Portuguese didn't transform this, something you might notice is it's the same goods moving around as always, right? It's, they're talking about spices. This is where I bring the box in, is that ivory and teak were goods. Teak's a kind of wood. And those are ivory, though, you might have recognized as something that was traded across the Indian Ocean for a long time. So that's a continuity. Now, it would be a change, like creating this luxury good to go straight to Portugal. So you could use it either way. Right, but the thing with the Ottomans, I see some comments here, is the Ottomans are at their peak in 1683 when they besiege Vienna and control most of North Africa and the Eastern Mediterranean. So sure, the Portuguese spice trade did affect the Ottomans, but they have all kinds of other sources of strength. And so Ottoman decline doesn't begin until much later. Okay. So these are things that you can find. They're using the same ports, the Muslim merchants, that stretches back into period 3. Now, what are the Portuguese doing that's new? Well, those are all things that people are mentioning in the chat. They notice in the document. Okay. Evidence beyond the document. I'm curious if people had other kinds of ideas. So, right. For this, so any other things about the Ottoman Empire that you could put in there? Yeah, Da Gama. That could be context, or it definitely could be, evidence depending on how you're using it, using him. Other places where that's why I showed that Portuguese fort in Africa. I'm not sure. The question asks about the 16th century. So the Dutch East India Company is technically not in the 16th century because it was established in 1602. But sometimes they will take that. So if you talked about other Europeans being interested there, right? Trade with India, direct trade, lasting trade, those things work, yeah. Those things work. The question is, how much does it transform things? And then you can say, this lasting trade kept some things the same kind of products, but made some things different merchants, different people profiting. Yeah, Venice, right on. Pirates. All right, I shared one example that I think shows you how sourcing analysis would work. Right, so I highlighted what I noticed here about this one. He's a Venetian trader, and that the trader was part of the author's Federici's point of view. And because the author's a trader, this is well informed, and we can see that because it's very, not just general. It's clearly seen this kind of thing in action. Okay, use this document. There's just one example of how that would work. Yeah, point of view trader. How about long essay questions? I'll create another poll, see which ones people answered for the long essays. Okay, so we got number 2, which is actually the first one, right? Number 3 and number 4. All right, if you go in there and vote, that'd be great. So I can kind of see. Yep, then Arnav, you can see too, right? Yeah, which ones? If no one did 2, we'll just skip it. The Albert calculator, well, people are voting. The Albert calculator is fairly reliable, but not exact. Yeah, like I mentioned, the answers to the why don't they release the multiple choice from Alina and Shrikar are correct. Question 3. I see what you're saying about Alzheimer's for question 2C back there. If you talk about that, it's a social problem, elder care and things like that. It's the kind of thing people get when they're older, so that creates a social issue. Alzheimer's would be evidence. That could work. All right. Yeah, how many now? I don't know. A lot of you are taking U.S. history. My kids have already had U.S. history. I have 11th graders. And so with them, they could talk about U.S. history here for question number 4. All right, let's say most people who are voting did 4, but so I'll be quicker there. And let's do these 3 and be done. It's gone 45 minutes. I definitely want to be done soon. Get some rest. Have some fun. Okay. So here's our questions. They're all causation questions. So hopefully you recognize that's asking you, like, what's the cause? Like, to what extent did one thing cause another? What for these then, the contextualization would be talking more about the things that are in the first part, like the introduction to the prompt. So like for this one, possible context would be the things that led to the rise of large scale empires. And then your reasoning, your body paragraphs would need to be about like causes. So you need to show us this caused that, or this part of it caused that. And you could do it where you're talking about one empire, like you could write a whole essay on Rome for this, but you could also talk about things, across a whole bunch of different places like that. All right, industrialization. So that's what this one here, I think, would look like. Evidence that I think people will use will be specifying like Silk Roads, Mediterranean sea lanes, those kinds of things, then naming empires. Then, for example, like Persians made roads and coins, Chinese made roads and coins. A lot of places made roads and coins, and that makes trading easier. All right. I'm going to go back a slide here then. So let's take a look at 3. So the same kind of thing to these ovens. So for number 3, trade networks expanded. Technological notions. So this is where you use your camel saddle, lateen sail, You could maybe talk about some Inca road building technologies, right? Imperialism in Africa is a little bit later, quite a bit later. So trade networks expanded, economic productivity increased. So then your context could be talking about either one of those things. Indian Ocean, again, it's a little shocking how much you could use Indian Ocean here. Bump that out. Yeah, caravans, you want to connect the caravan then to like a specific technology, like the camel saddle, which happens just for this time period. Yeah, you technically, I'm seeing your comment there, Arnav, about the contextualization. The thing with contextualization is you can do it for after, apparently. And I think the way that would look would be to point out things that didn't exist yet. So I'm not sure. I haven't seen someone do it. It's possible, and I think a smart kid could. So I'd be interested to see you'd have that. But I think this one here is technological innovations or transfers. That's key. So things like the Chinese compass. That's not brand new, but it gets into the Indian Ocean. That expands these networks here. I think that's what you'd be looking for. Be interested to see if anybody wants any American stuff. Right. So what's for context then? Before or after? Yeah, no, I think so. I just don't see it very often. I mean, I think you can do after. I'm not quite sure how it looks, but it's in the thing. So in this case, though, you'd be talking about the context would be this is before trans-Pacific and transatlantic trade. So I think you could talk about that because that kind of shows the limitation or, puts in context, right? Like that they weren't crossing the oceans yet. And then for the last ones, people were saying New Deal. Yep, I would think so. And then that would be a moderate controlled economy and then communism. So that's good. Yeah, just rock the DBQ. That's good. If you for those of you who do a push, if you get to the end, you spend all that time in the DBQ. If you write one body paragraph with 2 pieces of evidence that you explain, and then you sum it up with some analysis, like explaining the causation, you get 3 points. And then if you really crank on the DBQ, you'd be all set. So I don't see how McCarthyism, I don't see how those things fit in here, because you're looking for I love that you spent that time in the DBQ. It's going to work out, I think, because there's so many points available there. So here we're looking for like communist Soviet Union, communist China with very controlled economies, or like the managed economy of the U.S. And again, this one you could write a whole essay on the USSR. Or you could write something that compares the USSR and the United States and Sweden, a country with a little more socialism. So I think that's what that would look like. And then here again, so you'd maybe be talking about the context. Here might be something like the Great Depression or the Russian Revolution. Yeah, Cold War for context. Yes, for sure. I think. So, all right. I think that's what I have. It's been nice talking into the camera here, you chatting over there. Let me see if there's any other questions. You can put some questions in. People have. It sounds, the kind of evidence there that people are talking about, those are the things that really make the difference in these. Is do you have a lot of evidence? Because that's where you can even pick up the complexity point. So, right. I think 5-year plan works, but cultural evolution does not. For evidence here, 5-year plan definitely works for number 4. Like, you could write a paragraph on the 5-year plan to be good. No, you have to explain it, but explaining it's not. Explaining it's not that much. I mean, 2 good sentences would do it. You kind of would need something on the Cold War and then something specific about the Cold War, like the ideological difference. And then you would need to connect it to then you would need to connect it to like the prompt specifically. All right, this is 5-able, it's not 6-able. Great Leap Forward for sure would work. That'd be perfect example. So, I mean, a 2-page LEQ is going to be able to score very high. And you can get a lot of points like in 1 page if you're using evidence, for sure. Yeah, we knew you meant China, Amy. All right, I am going to end the stream here. Don't want to go on and on. Hopefully you feel good about what you wrote. And remember, you don't have to get all the points. So if at some point you're like, oh yeah, I wrote that. Plus there's tons of stuff that you might have talked about with your friends or with your teacher that I didn't mention. So this was just meant to give you, I'm just trying to give you an idea, kind of what comes to my mind. I'm sure when people read these essays, they'll find all kinds of other examples that I haven't thought of, and maybe you haven't thought of either. So, all right, keep up the good work, and maybe we'll see some of you at Camp 5-able or other things down the road. Night night.